here. We're back on the podcast with Mr. Zac Palmer, who has a very important question to ask you, and that's what if your sales department wasn't struggling? And he's here to help us out because low team morale can impact productivity. There can be buyer resistance, lost deals, dissatisfied clients, team frustration, limited growth. Bad, right? We don't want any of that. We want Mr. Zac Palmer to get us pointed in the right direction. He is known as the sales and persuasion strategist. He's personally generated over $150 million in sales, shared the stage, and consulted for big names like Tony Robbins. His website is thezacpalmer.com. That's Z-A-C, Zac with no K, thezacpalmer.com. We're here to take our business sales to the next level from the man, the myth, the legend himself. So, Mr. Zac, glad to be speaking with you.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Robert. Excited to be here.
Excited to have you. And so what are you all about? We introduced you with your bio, but that only tells us so much, right? We go right to the source and we say, hey, Mr. Zac, what really gets you passionate, turned on, focused? What's the current news?
What gets me passionate, turned on, focused? I love people and I love business. I mean, to put it very simply, I got to start in business when I was 19 years old, took over family business. There's a bit of a story history to that unique inception point. But, the thing that occurred to me originally is I had, like many entrepreneurs, you have a passion for something. And I was in the health and wellness industry, and I thought I had a passion and affinity for health and fitness. And I still do. But because of it, I took my education to extreme lengths. I thought like, hey, I'll become the best fitness and wellness expert in the world, and that'll solve all my problems. But you learn really quickly that you can be the best at something, but that doesn't necessarily set you up for success in business. So I very quickly had to adapt and learn really how to run every aspect of a business, from marketing to sales to operations, leadership, finance, HR, and so on. And in doing so, I realized that I really had a greater passion and love for business than I did fitness and wellness. I mean, it's still something that is incredibly important to me, that I'm passionate about, but I think my greatest opportunity to serve and impact is through sharing my business knowledge and experience.
I like that. It's an interesting insight that there's skill and there's passion, and your skill might be where you start, and then you try out different things and might be a little awkward and not quite what you wanted in that middle period. And then you say, hey, here's something where the passion is even better than this other thing. And the skill is something that I can beef up, that I can develop. And when people are talking about sales especially, and leadership especially, and just dealing with people, having these conversations, even like we're doing here, right? It's so awkward. You're talking to strangers, and you have to. It's like being on a first date or a job interview, but it's one of these skills where sure, it's awkward at first, but you do it a little bit and you get more relaxed and you figure out a process. And so speaking to all of that, like, what do you think are the skills that people, entrepreneurs, companies need to develop these days, especially because you're a sales guy?
Are you thinking it from a more holistic front, or is it pertain specifically to sales?
I mean, you tell me, like, is sales something that you think is like weak or lacking or needs to be improved, or just like, where do you see the hurt in general?
I think it can always be improved. And I think a lot of resistance for many entrepreneurs comes from old conditioning and belief systems. A lot of people, when they hear the word sales, there's an immediate resistance or blood curdling, or you get a little bit of goosebumps because there's a lot of negative connotations, and everybody imagines the slimy car salesman. But the reality is we sell ourselves all day long. I mean, if you want anything, whether it's from your kids, your significant other, a co-parent, co-worker, whatever, there's some aspect of selling the desired outcome and helping people become aware of their pains in order to get them clear and on the same page as you. And all it really comes down to, in my mind's eye, I think is curiosity. If I had to put it in one word, I think curiosity is one of the things that we could all embody and leverage to create a greater depth of relationship in business as leaders, as sales professionals, as marketers, in any single context. If there was one word I had to bring it down to, it would be curiosity.
Very nice. And it seems like that keyword curiosity, it's something, there's like the term like childlike curiosity, right? It's like when we were young, we were curious. Everything in the world was new. We asked questions. We weren't afraid too much to make mistakes. And then as we get older, we get more shaped and hardened. And then for some reason, the curiosity goes away. And then I guess that serves us for a while, but it kind of limits us, doesn't it? And so it could
Mhm.
definitely serve us to open that curiosity back up, especially if we're not getting what we want, like you said, with our family, with our friends, with our business. We're just too stuck in our own thinking. We don't have that empathy. We don't know about, we don't even really care about what other people want. And so when you come to some company and you say, hey, you need to have more curiosity, you need to beef up your sales, like where are they stuck? What is limited in their thinking and their actions?
Um, it's curiosity isn't necessarily going to be the thing that strikes the note in this particular context. So I'll try and expand this and bring it full circle. But the biggest thing is it's always going to be relative to stage of business. I mean, what the present challenges are, right? I mean, the problems you have as you're growing from 0 to 100,000 are oftentimes going to be very different than the problems you're experiencing around $500,000 in revenue, a million, 3, 10 million, 25, 50, and beyond. So first thing is awareness. You've got to know where you're at. And relative to your stage of business, the size of your company, it can be anything from your initial stages of operational infrastructure. I mean, are you doing too many repeated remedial tasks that can be automated, systemized, and simplified? Where are you wasting time when we could be leveraging the technology and resources that we have readily available today? Another is owner-led sales teams. In the beginning, that is something that in most cases is a necessity because the owner is the most knowledgeable. They're oftentimes the most passionate, the most articulate. They have the greatest ability to help really present the product or service in the most impactful light just because it's their baby, right? So at some point it becomes, how do we extract everything that makes them brilliant and duplicate that, synthesize it so that more people can become representations of that product or service, and the owner can start stepping back and focusing on really running the business. So owner-led sales teams is another common problem. Compliance issues are another really big thing today. Now, typically, that's not a conversation I'm having with companies until they're getting closer to about the roughly $10 million revenue mark in annual revenues. But the closer you get, the bigger the target on your back. And the FTC becomes that much more aware. Are you making big, grandiose claims? Are you telling people that we're, printing money? You got a magic money machine in the back shop, and you work with me. Everything, the results are guaranteed. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that we have to run through to ensure that you're marketing and representing your business and selling your business from morally and ethically and in a way that is legally compliant, so you're mitigating risk and liabilities. And of course, there's the strategy and tactics. The strategies that you use, what got you to your current level of success isn't likely to be the same steps you need to take to get to your next. So sometimes it's a revision in the overall strategy. Maybe it's the introduction of a new product or service. How do you represent that market? What or that part of the market? Where are you? What is your go-to-market strategy? And the actual tactical. I mean, beefing up your conversational game. And I try to remove the word sales from the conversation in so many instances, and again come back to that word of curiosity, because that's really what it comes down to. You're trying to get a thorough understanding of where the client believes they currently are, what their perceived challenges are, what their opportunities are, the desired outcomes that they want to experience or create. And then if and when it's appropriate, when you have a product or service that can resolve those things or help pour fuel on the fire, you're presenting it in such a way that persuades and influences them to make a decision to move forward. We're paying for speed. So those are some of the common challenges in a nutshell. But again, it's really going to be relative to the stage of business. The one thing I can say, the more that you can anticipate. I love the quote from Wayne Gretzky. It's like somebody asked Wayne, what made you the best hockey player in the world? And he goes, most players, the greatest, the best in the world, skate to where the puck is. What made me the best is I skate to where the puck is going. So we can leverage the power of anticipation and start to think about, when I'm reaching this next level, what are some of the stumbling blocks? What are the the potholes, the big red stop signs that could potentially get in my way, and we start building solutions in advance, now you cruise through those obstacles as opposed to having to be reactive. It's proactivity versus reactivity.
I love it. And it's awesome to get a peek into the way you think. I love some of these visuals that you're laying out for us. And there's so many possible paths we can go in the conversation. But as a fun example, the owner led sales teams, I found that interesting because I think a lot of us have seen that, right? Where the owner
Mhm.
kind of becomes the bottleneck and only I can make these phone calls and only I know the ins and outs. And maybe they have the intuitiveness and the accidental success. And I love your metaphor earlier where you said, hey, extract everything that's great and then duplicate it. And so as far as this like really big problem of the owner-led sales team, which like limits them, it keeps them skating to where the hockey puck is, it's not future focused. Like what is that situation like and how do you help with that?
You know, it's first it comes down to awareness. It's realizing that if I want to grow, if you really have the desire to grow, and this is one of the first questions you have to ask is, are you okay with being where you're at? Some consultants might build a $250,000 practice and be completely happy and fulfilled. They've got time freedom, they're bringing in great revenue. So you have to know if you have the desire to grow. And that might seem like an ironic question, but not everybody does. So know where you are, know where your ultimate desires are. If you do have that desire, then it comes down to who do you have that can help you extract what makes you great and then create a duplicatable process around. And that's what's so beautiful about the owner is there is so often so much brilliance that we can take with them that we can actually build a framework. But oftentimes their resistance is exactly what you said. Nobody can do this as well as me. Nobody's ever going to be as effective. Sales are going to drop. They start painting this worst case scenario. But the reality is, you know, at least in the beginning, nobody is going to be as effective as you. But as a leader, it's our job, our role, our responsibility to build other people up, to elevate them. And if you maintain that belief and you aren't willing to work through a short-term sacrifice in order to create the ultimate outcome and desire and really impact that you want to have, then you've got to let go. So it all comes down to being awareness. What do you want to accomplish? Being aware. What do you want to accomplish and achieve? And then who do you have to help extract that brilliance from you? And thankfully, there's a lot of great tools and resources in addition to people. And then how do you create a process and a team that will embody and really represent your product at the highest level? And hiring is just as important. And this is another thing that people screw up a lot. And there's 4 really critical filters that when I'm working with a client, I'm looking through. And this is actually how I analyze if I'm a good fit for a client. It's the same process I use when I'm hiring or building teams, whether I'm consulting for a VP of sales and helping him develop a more thorough and aligned hiring strategy or process. Regardless of who it's for, it's a really powerful framework. And I'm just asking, am I a good fit for the client? Am I a good fit for the culture? Do I believe in the product or service? And do I have the skill set or aptitude necessary to be able to serve this company at the highest level? If those are all yeses, then there's a high probability that it's going to be a very, very successful hire. But the third one I mentioned is one that is not asked often enough and it's very frequently overlooked. Do I believe in the product or service? You can be an outstanding sales professional, but nobody's going to feel good about selling a product, representing a company, a service, if they wouldn't use that product themselves. So I would only recommend that you hire that way and really apply that way if you're somebody that's in a sales position and is looking for new roles. Don't just go for any company because it's going to make you the most amount of money. Work with the companies where you believe in the product or service, and ultimately the money will follow.
Well, very cool. Well, it's great that you've thought these things through for us, and I'm sensing a little bit of a pattern here of like when I ask you a question or I say how do you do this, you say, well, hey, like let's reposition it slightly and let's maybe like ask some of the other questions surrounding it, and instead of just charging ahead, well, hey, are these things proper? Is my answer to these questions yes before just going ahead with it, because then, well, I might not get the results I want, might have to go back. So it just seems like it pays to be slightly more careful than we may be at the moment and just kind of logically think through the strategy of what we're about to do. And as far as you and your own growth and your own journey, right? We're all working on things, we're all bettering ourselves. What are you currently working on? Where are you personally struggling, Mr. Zac Palmer?
Uh, Working and struggling. I mean, for me, um, I can't say that it's any particular struggle. It's just life has seasons. And I think the older we get, the more aware we become of. Are you familiar with the wheel of life concept? The wheel of life where
The
we have, health
like
and wealth and
family and health, and
hmm
yeah, I've heard that concept.
spirituality, friendships, exactly. So,
Yeah.
to me, um, the most commonly used word is balance. I was chatting with a friend about this yesterday. I hate that word. I'm like, there's no such thing as balance in life or business. What there needs to be more of, again, is awareness. And that awareness falls down to, or comes down to, at any one given point in time, life has its seasons. If you're at the inception point of starting a business, one of the sacrifices is likely going to be that you're going to be working a lot more. You're going to be putting a lot more time in to get something off the ground. And because of that, that pendulum is swing out of range where your focus is over in this particular category. But now those other areas of life are starting to get neglected, at least to a degree. So when we realize that, whether by chance or by choice, it's now our opportunity to bring the pendulum back into range and create a more harmonious environment where, okay, I put a lot of time here. I need to refocus and redouble back my efforts on my spouse or with my kids, or maybe my health is getting out of whack. So it's being aware of where you are, listening to your intuition and trusting those, warning signs, so to speak, and just bringing things back into range. But it's a constant balance, like it's swinging, or not balance, but harmony, where we're swinging back and forth, trying to stay close to that midline, but you're never going to be there.
Right. And it seems like more of a adventurous entrepreneurial lifestyle to do it that way, because like I don't like that term balance too, right? Balance makes you think, oh well, I have a little percentage of this, or 1 foot in, 1 foot out. And it's like what's makes a lot more sense is this awareness concept that you're mentioning, and being
hmm
aware of the price that you pay, right? And I mean,
hmm
hey, it doesn't mean that it has to be a huge price to start your business, but what price have you paid? And if that kind of causes a little bit of disrepair in some other area of life, then when the pendulum swings back, then go and fix that up, and make it all work, and proceed forward, and think about that life wheel and the path, that the journey that you're on. And so you've accomplished so much. You've spoken on these stages. You're big on getting these authentic client relationships, growing a team, driving employee engagement, all these fascinating concepts. But
hmm
you and I have only just met here, Mr. Zac
hmm
Palmer, so I don't
hmm
necessarily know the perfect ideal question to be asking you right now. So, what do you think in this conversation we're having? Is there a missing, hidden, invisible question that I should be asking you? And if you think there is, then what's the question I should be asking you?
That's a really great question. As you've noticed, is throughout the pattern of the conversation, it's one question always leads to countless others, and
Yeah.
that's, I think, where that curiosity comes in. And I don't think there is just one great question. It's about allowing conversations to flow organically. I mean, you have a target, you have something you're moving toward, but ultimately, you're just trying to dig. Really get to know the person, the individual. I can never think of one great question because there's too many good ones, but there is an important concept to really consider about this specific subject, which is this: the quality of your questions determines the quality of your answers. The quality of your answers determine the quality of your life. You get better questions, you get better answers. You get better answers, you have a better life. So that's where curiosity and becoming a really fantastic explorer, asking the questions that are uncomfortable, showcasing a bit of vulnerability, really diving deep. Most people stop at the surface level. But when we can learn to really peel back the onion and create an environment where somebody feels comfortable sharing their darkest pains, the biggest trials and struggles and tribulations, the things that they've been through, and help them to explore what's possible and potentially even paint a brighter future than they ever possibly imagined, then what greater gift do we have? And that's what I love about the power of questions and curiosity as a whole. So is there one? Not that I can think of in the moment. There's always a plethora.
Well, I guess the question that could have been, if we reverse engineer it, is what's the secret to life, right? And you said the secret is ask better questions, get better answers, have a better life. And it's a little bit mind blowing, right? You're like applying the salesmanship ideas to the bigger picture, to life in general. asking better questions, being curious, digging deep, figuring out what it's all about to get to some better solutions. And I can imagine if someone is looking to amp up their sales game, whether with themselves or their team or their employees, they've gotten a little bit of a taste here because it's a podcast, but we want it always to lead to the next thing, right? You're a salesman, you know all about that. So on the
Mhm.
podcast, we give them a little bit of a tease, but it's all about getting to someone to that next step to find out more about you, to schedule that call, to take the next step. So what could that next step be? If someone was amazed and impressed by the little tidbits of sales training you laid out in today's podcast, where should someone go? What's the call to action?
The easiest thing to do is hop on my website. Go to what you mentioned earlier. Go to thezacpalmer.com and book a call. It's a short 30-minute conversation, just a really great opportunity for us to get to know each other, ask great questions, and see if there's synergy and potentially a good fit. If you have a problem that you need to overcome, one thing I didn't talk about earlier is just toxicity in a sales team and culture. And I think something that's really important, and this applies to many aspects of life, but is the adage that we get what we tolerate. And sometimes we might be tolerating a toxic environment because we have an all-star employee, performer, but we aren't considering the ripple effect of that person and how insidious their behaviors can be affecting all the other people in the organization. So beware of toxicity, ask great questions. Oh, and on that note of questions, there's one thing as you're saying that I thought of as well, just to illustrate this idea. A lot of people, as an example, will ask a question like, "What's wrong with me?" But if we were to reframe that and ask a better question, we could say, "What's great with who I am? What's good in this particular scenario?" The brain is always asking questions. What we want to do is condition it to ask a better quality of question. And unfortunately, we're predisposed to look for the negative. And the reality is, the more you look for more of what's wrong, the more you're going to find. But the same thing happens when you look for more of what's right. So learn to ask better questions and reframe that inner dialogue so that you get a more powerful outcome.
That's powerful. That's helpful. That the default, it's so easy to fall into that negativity and the toxicity, and it might take some conscious effort. It might be one of those uncomfortable growth stages to be more positive, to ask those better questions. But hey, that's a path towards a better life. And especially asking yourself the question of how can I have Mr. Zac Palmer make my team better and remove that toxicity and make the sales team work a lot better? And you can answer that question by scheduling that call, having that 30-minute conversation with Mr. Curiosity himself, thezacpalmer.com. Go there, schedule a call. He understands sales challenges with over $150 million in personally generated revenue and even more generated for his clients. Mr. Zac Palmer knows how to help you. That is thezacpalmer.com. And as we're headed there, Mr. Zac, it's time for the scary part of the show where I try to stump you, try to put you on the spot by asking about a fun quote or lesson that has served you in life or in business. You've already shared so many cool gems, but one last one, hopefully. What is a fun quote or lesson that you think has served you that you can pass on to us?
Yeah, one of my favorites is there's nothing dumber than running the wrong direction enthusiastically.
Ooh.
And really what that means to me is pay for speed, invest in clarity, surround yourself with other people that have accomplished what you haven't yet, because it will help you to avoid having to pay the dumb tax of figuring out everything on your own, and instead be able to accelerate and work through those common pitfalls and hopefully skip over some of them. So pay for speed. Nothing dumber than running the wrong direction enthusiastically. Invest in coaches, mentors, consultants, people that can help get you there because they've been there, done that thing.
Very wise advice. And let's consider that as we talk to Mr. Zac Palmer and see if he is a good fit for someone who can be part of your brain dream team. And so that way you can avoid paying the dumb tax and make those mistakes that are avoidable. That is thezacpalmer.com, thezacpalmer.com. Go there, schedule a call, and tell him that you heard about him from Robert Plank's Marketer of the Day podcast, and we'll see you there. And thanks, Mr. Zac, for being here, blowing our minds, helping us out. I really appreciate what you brought today. So thank you.
Yeah. Thanks for having me, Robert. I appreciate it.